Well, hey, welcome to United Opposition with Scott and Marshall. Today we're talking Olympic outrage. Are you ready, Marshall?
I'm ready.
Here we go. Well, welcome viewers. Thank you for joining us here at United Opposition. Marshall, how are you feeling today?
Better than I was last week. Thank you for asking.
I'm feeling better than I was last week as well. I'm not wearing a back brace now, and I'm actually sitting upright on a stool instead of having to lay back on a chair with a back brace. So I'm doing well as well. I didn't start the show on the ground like I did last week.
Well, I guess the prayers worked.
Yes, you know what, they have. They've been working slowly but surely. I have a whole spiritual story to share that with you at some point, of everything that's happened and everything that I've been through to get where I'm at right now. So just I want to share that with you. But we're gonna kind of talk a little bit about stuff that's happening recently going on, the Olympic outrage, and I'm just gonna give my little very, very quick. Normally I go like a minute, then a minute, but mine is going to be very, very quick. And here's where I stand on it. I think it's time that Christians stop being offended and start being offensive. How about you, Marshall? Where do you stand on this?
Well, I didn't get to watch all of the opening ceremonies. I have gone back and I've seen references to the Feast of Bacchus or whatever. Also confused for the Last Supper. That is upsetting so many people. I will say that in general, it was a very fun opening ceremonies to watch. It was very well done.
You went back and watched it?
Yeah, I watched it on streaming. So I was pretty pleased with it. There were, there was a lot of there was some messaging in there for sure, though. So let's talk about it and see.
Yeah, well, let me just start off with how I saw it. My wife and I were on a date afternoon because our daughter was at somebody's house, and we went to a Roadhouse Grill. And as we get in there, my wife is like on one of the TVs. Oh, hey, the Olympic, because it's like middle of the afternoon, which is their nighttime. She's like, oh, the Olympic opening ceremonies are on the TV behind me. So she's watching it, and I'm looking at a window mirror reflection of it. So that's what I'm seeing. We get there, and the first thing I see, I have no idea where it was, and it was the mechanical horse, whatever it was, going across the river as it was going. And I'm like, that is, like, as a person who does production for events and stuff like that, who's done that before, I'm like, that's pretty impressive. I don't know where the whole controversial part of what we're going to talk about fit in from that point, but we kind of had a little bit of slow service there, but she was apologetic. Oh, we're not in a hurry. We were there for a long time, and the ceremony still wasn't over when we were done. For me, for the most part, I was like, oh my gosh, will this hurry up? Like it just felt, again, my perspective was I couldn't hear what's going on. I'm just watching it in a reflection of a TV behind me. And it just felt like, it felt like the torch was passed to 150 different people. Like just when you thought it was over, like, okay, here's this person. Oh, this is the last person gonna do it. No, then they go get on a boat, and then they go on a 17-minute boat ride where they hand the torch to like 3 or 4 different people on the boat, and then get back up, and they're gonna do it at the Louvre. Oh wait, no, it's not at the Louvre. They're walking over here, and then they're literally one person gets it and hands it to another person. They're not even like walking or they just get it. Hey, hand it to others. They get it. Hey, it felt so, to me, it felt so ridiculous. The whole thing felt ridiculously long. It's like, it felt like really, really like they're trying to be artsy and inclusive or whatever. I don't know. I didn't get much out of it. Then I got home and later in the evening started hearing about this controversy, which I didn't see live. I didn't see it happen. And I didn't see any of what I saw of it was not in context where I'm hearing what the people are saying during it. I only saw it on the screen with a few subtitles going on, and then I heard about it afterwards. But let's go ahead and put up this first image. This is the image that everybody is talking about, of some kind of display over a bridge somewhere as part of it, and people immediately thinking that it was a reference to the Last Supper painting by Da Vinci. And this was my first way that I saw this controversy, was this image posted online by a lot of Christian people, like, what is going on, being really offended by it and everything. And I looked at it, I'm like, wow, that really does to me look like they are mocking or satirizing. It really does look like from that camera angle, looks like a representation of the painting by Leonardo da Vinci of the Last Supper. Would you agree that that particular image looks very similar, Marshall?
Yeah, I'd agree that there's some similarities, sure.
I understand that it was not a table, that it was actually a runway and there were people walking apart, and that this was actually like on a bridge or something like that set up. So it's not set up as it's just the unfortunateness or whatever of the camera angle that they chose to capture this. I am just curious. Couple things. I'm just curious. One, do you think anybody organizing this saw this and didn't think that it could possibly be misconstrued as the Last Supper?
Yeah, I don't know, because remember, what you have here is a single frame from a scene that had a lot of moving elements in it. We're missing a person down below.
I think that came later. That person came in later and was revealed and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, it's just I don't know. You and I, because we're conscious of this and we're thinking about this, we're thinking, hey, wait a minute. But I am not a producer in France, a secular producer at that, probably. I don't know what quite exactly they're going with here, other than showing people sitting around a table and having a good time.
So let's look at the second picture. As I understand, this is actually the painting that they were referencing. Is that what your take is? That that's what they're saying, that this is the Greek painting that they were referencing, or is this still?
Yeah, I don't know. And I'll tell you that this looks more different than it does compared to the Last Supper.
Yes. But go back to the previous picture. Their setup does look more like a direct homage to the Last Supper than it does to that other painting.
Right.
So here's the thing. We can go and take the picture down. What I'm getting a lot from the right is the offensiveness of that they purposely were mocking the Last Supper painting by Da Vinci. What I'm hearing on the left is you ignorant Christians think that everything is about Christianity. You are uneducated and didn't know that this was a reference to a Greek thing. Did anybody really know that it was a reference to that Greek picture? Like, even the thing I'm getting from the left is, see, this is why you should be educated, because you didn't know the difference. And I'm like, I bet you didn't know the difference either. If we was asked,
no, there's a guy with grapes on his head that's missing.
Yeah, but again,
that's Bacchus. That's actually well known by many people.
Who?
Well, myself. Yeah, sure.
You saw that and you knew exactly what the reference was.
Yes, because that's a depiction of the Greek god Bacchus, who is the god of partying, wine, merrymaking. Well, I guess I'm probably in a minority, mind you. Most people, because the American education system is pretty weak, But I have an education in both literature as well as history, so I'm like, oh, okay, I get what that is.
I would have had no reference. I would have had no reference to Bacchus. You say his name is?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I would have had no reference to that.
I learned that one in elementary school, by the way.
Yeah.
That's how far back that knowledge goes.
So there could be questions whether or not, I'm not going to get into it right here because I don't know. I don't know the producers. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it was a direct reference to Bacchus and that, like they're claiming it was. I don't know if it was them trying to secretly or overtly, either way, mock the Last Supper painting by Da Vinci. I don't know. I can only look and say that publicly they're saying it had nothing to do with Da Vinci. It was this. But I am curious if that is the truth, then I can't imagine that nobody looked at that framing and thought, oh, hey, this looks like something else. And either they didn't care or they purposely let it go through. I think the extent, my personal opinion, the extent of what happened was either they saw it and didn't care or did it tongue in cheek. I don't think it was an open mocking of the Leonardo da Vinci painting of the Last Supper. based on what they've said and based on all the other things that are there. But I think they saw that it could be and didn't care.
Mm-hmm. So my question is just, so what? Either way, let's say somebody said, yes, here is the Last Supper, and we're going to totally straight up satirize it or mock it with our depiction here. Then what?
Well, that's where I am going to probably defer from most Christian Americans in that, yeah, so what?
Mm-hmm.
The painting of the Last Supper is not what the Last Supper looked like. If you're mocking that painting, I mean, I suppose you could say, well, that is the common visualization of it. So by mocking it, you are mocking the actual event. But at the same time, if you're mocking that painting is already so ridiculously inaccurate that I don't know that Christians should be venerizing it as much as they do. Like it's a painting of what the everything in there looked contemporary to the time of the painting, not to the time of Christ. I don't see it as a depiction of that. And seeing, and I even commented on a couple of them online where somebody's saying this is what the real Last Supper looked like, not what they depicted. And I'm like, that is even not an accurate depiction of the Last Supper. Let's not get confused. But this is going to stem back to my conversation last week. And that's why I said what I said in my opening, that we need to, as Christians, need to stop being offended and start being offensive. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is God calls us to be countercultural. And I think every Christian would agree with me that we're supposed to be countercultural, which means the culture is always going to be counter of us. We shouldn't be surprised. We shouldn't be like, oh my gosh, they're mocking Christianity. How dare they? It's like, that's what they do. That's what they're always going to do. That is the persecution that Christ told us about, that we're going to live through. He says, be countercultural. And I think too many Christians are instead of trying to be countercultural, we're trying to change the culture so we're more comfortable in it. We want the culture to more reflect our beliefs so that we can be more comfortable in that culture. And so we fight to change the culture to match us instead of focusing on being countercultural. That's where I stand with it. And again, I can almost hear, because Mike Harvey's in the studio right now, I can almost hear him breathing right now, sitting in the seat next to me. He's probably like, in fact, Mike, if you want to comment, like Marshall was commenting, get some comments going on there, and we'll read them on the air. But as a person who is a Christian who could potentially be offended by this, I don't find offense in it. I would actually rather find more Christians being offensive in culture. I would rather see Christians being seen as offensive to culture than for us trying to, from the outside, make culture more comfortable for us. I don't think God called us to be comfortable, to create a culture of comfort for Christians. He told us to be countercultural. What do you think, Marshall?
Well, I think Christianity does best when it's not politically empowered.
You mentioned that last week, yeah.
Yeah, because I think you could go all the way back to the history of Israel, and you can look at Israeli history, and you see all of these episodes where Israel rises up, it becomes a power in its own right, and then they kind of get I don't know, but they go astray, for lack of a better term, just for simplicity's sake. And then they get conquered by the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Greeks, the Romans,
and even
and so
before
on.
Then, during the time of Judges, they're constantly falling to some local warlord or some local area, to the Ammonites,
right.
Midianites and stuff like that, to some local smaller, where then they call upon God. I'm assuming that's where you're going with this.
Precisely. And I think we can look at this in more modern times. Again, you look at the Christian church, and the Christian church flourished under the persecutions of the early Roman emperors. And then you get Theodosius, it's not before Theodosius, it's Constantine who legalizes Christianity. And then you get Theodosius, who actually converts the whole empire to Christianity. And then Christianity becomes this mainstream political power as well as a religious power. And it spreads all across, Europe and into other corners of the world. And it becomes corrupt. It becomes this thing that eventually you get a Protestant Reformation, because until the Protestant Reformation, Christian was Catholic. So you look at the Catholic Church became this all-encompassing machine, if you will, that became more obsessed with money and power than it did the salvation of people's souls.
Yep.
And so then you get the Protestant Reformation, then you get the Counter-Reformation, where the church is like, well, maybe we need to clean up our act. They're right. And then they do. But you still have this dominance of Christianity. And even now, today, in the current political cycle, it's viewed as Christians versus everybody else. And I think Christians are making the wrong reach here, because I think if Christians gain political power, it's going to be to their long-term detriment. And it certainly isn't going to convert souls to Jesus Christ, because that's not what brings people to Jesus.
Are you sure? Because I think it's going to take a long time, but I think effectively, hasn't the United States in the past 200 years been basically that bastion of Christianity?
And look at where we're headed now.
Exactly,
look at where we're at, buddy.
It took a long time. It took a long time to get there, but yeah, I'm.
It's just an erosion over time.
Have we already had that? Have we already had that basically? Or was it okay then? Maybe it wasn't okay then.
Well, I think the history of the past 250 years or so, or a little less, it's been a rough history. It's good time for Christians, not such good times for other groups. And I don't want to romanticize the history of America for that very reason, and I don't want to go off the rails and get into that, because that's a whole nother discussion. Yeah. But I think that Christianity does really, really well when it's down in the dirt, in the mud, in the trenches, and you're out there helping person to person, one person ministering to another person in the street, in the gutter, in the hospital, in the rehab clinic, in the prison. When you're doing that, that's when you're at your best. Yep. And that's when I think you convert people's hearts to Jesus Christ. And I think that's when it is a permanent and lasting conversion. Any other formula is not going to work.
Speaking of getting in the trenches with people, I don't want to forget our sponsor, Covenant Coffee, Hope in a Cup. And that's literally what they do. What you describe what Christianity should be is literally what Covenant Coffee does in reaching out to emancipated foster youth, people who are they're marginalized outside of the foster system and don't have anywhere else to look. They help support them. They give them jobs. They give them a place to work, a place to live, and they give them mentors. And so I want to make sure we don't miss out on that. That's a perfect, because they're doing exactly what you said. They're living out the Bible. They're living out Christianity. So when you buy coffee from them, 2 locations in Bakersfield, you are supporting somebody who does do exactly what Marshall was saying here. It's interesting. Mike did chime in on the
I was reading his comments.
The second comment that he had. I mean, I don't know how much I want to get into this argument, but I'm curious how you, from a different perspective, he was saying that he strongly believes that they go out of their way to not offend any other religion. Why do you think? I have a theory, but why do you think Christianity is a religion that everybody feels is okay to mock? Assuming we're going off the assumption, like you and I said in this argument, right. If they are openly mocking Christianity, why is Christianity the easy one to mock?
Yeah, well, again, because it's associated with the establishment, and I think that's really the big reason. The establishment is always the target.
It's barely a third of religious power in the world.
I understand, and I think you're correct about that. But especially in the Western world, it's still perceived as the top dog, the big target, if you will. And there's also the uncomfortable reality that other religions. You get these radical terrorist elements, which are extreme subsets of other religions. But, if you were to, draw a picture of the Prophet Muhammad, well, somebody, on the Olympics, well, lives would be endangered by that. On the other hand, if you tear up a picture of the Pope, or you again, if you were to mock the Last Supper or something, there's probably no Christian in the world necessarily that is going to come and attack you.
Probably.
So some of
So it
that's
does
there,
two
you know.
things, in my opinion. It does, when you mock Christianity, again, if this was or wasn't, I don't think it intentionally was. I think it was they saw it could and didn't really care kind of thing. But if and when you mock Christianity, you do two things. You prove that Christianity has power. That there is actually truth to the message, because otherwise, why would you mock it? Why would you feel compelled to mock it unless there was something that was challenging you, unless there was something inside of Christianity, inside the belief of Christianity, that was challenging you, that doesn't challenge you the way other religions do. And secondly, you're proving that Christianity is not the problem. Is not the religion that's going to cause violence. As much as you want to say violent Christian violence, you know that you can get away with doing it because there is going to be effectively no repercussions. And so I think it proves a couple of things, but I think mostly it proves that there is power in the gospel message of Jesus Christ. I believe there is actual power, and people, when they don't want to conform to a godly lifestyle, that they will rebel against that, and that shows its power. That actually shows you that's what you're rebelling against, because that's what you see as powerful. That's what you see as something that actually carries.
Right. That's the purpose of satire.
You're legitimatizing. You're actually legitimizing.
Yeah.
You're actually legitimizing Christianity when you mock it in such a way.
Right. So again, just like with all other comedy, satire is a form of comedy. And again, what you're doing is you're speaking truth to the power, and punching up like that rather than punching down. So again, like I said, there's this perception that Christianity is still the dominant religion, particularly in the West. France is obviously a secular Western nation. Ergo, you're going to get that kind of artistic production out of them. So
I would like to say this to Christians who are watching this, and this is something that's in general for our current culture. When it comes to the news, when it comes to social media, when it comes to anything, our current culture, I feel that the importance is put on being first more than it's put on being correct. Like, you look at the news media, it's more important that they tell you first. It's more important that they're the first one to break the story. The less important thing is whether or not the story is correct. Facts and details and is this correct is less as important as being the first one to bring it to you. And I think that carrying that, I'm going to be offended first. I want to be the first one to comment on this and say, how dare you, before we even check to see what, because I saw it everyone was posting. I'm like, wow, if that really does, by that one picture, we can put that first picture back up again real quick. By looking at this one picture, I looked at it and thought, wow, that really looks like the Olympic opening ceremonies is openly mocking the painting of the Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci, in so probably mocking Christianity. That was my first reaction when I looked at it. But I did not post publicly my first reaction because I didn't know the whole story. I had not watched all of the ceremony. I did not see what they were explaining. I did not know the context of this image. And so I chose, I'm not going to, until I find out more, I'm not going to comment on that. So we can take the picture off. I think not enough Christians are doing that. I think not enough Christians are saying, let's find out, let's see what actually happened. Everybody just wants to be first to be offended, first on the top of those comments, first to be, and it's almost like virtue signaling, except the opposite way. It's victim signaling. I want to be the first one to say that I'm offended and you shouldn't be able to do that. It's like, man, let's just, why can't we all wait to find out what actually happened? Because one of the first things I wanted to say about the assassination attempt on President Trump a few weeks ago, I look just in glancing at everything, I'm like, man, this seems like a major failure of the Secret Service. But instead of going there immediately, I'm like, but let's wait to see what the details pull out. Now, as the weeks have gone by and the details come out, it looks like that probably was the actual, that was the issue and would have been right. But I would rather not jump to that conclusion and publicly make a statement based on not having all the information. Why can't we all just hold our tongues for just a little time so that we can find, why do we feel like we have to be the first ones to comment? What do you think, Marshall?
I think there's a verse in the Bible, blessed are you when they persecute you.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to just say, oh, cool. And then find the real battles that we need to be fighting as Christians. And I think the real battle that every Christian needs to be putting most of their time and effort and energy into is internal. Within each one of us, am I walking the path that God has laid out for me, period.
Mm-hmm.
Right there. If you can get that right, then you can then turn around and do that with your family and get your family right. And then once you have yourself and your house right, then you create an example that will attract other people to you, because people are not attracted to bristling and porcupines. Nobody wants to hug a porcupine, but they're attracted to warmth. They're attracted to stability. They're attracted to strength. And sometimes that means you just have to let all of this other stuff go, because it's going to happen. And that's okay. Because again, the battle is here. It's in your house. Exactly. And then when you have all that right, then get out into the street, get into the gutter, get into the prison, the jail, the hospital, the rehab clinic, get into those places, get your hands dirty. Don't be afraid to embrace the leopard on the highway, because the leopard, not the leopard.
Leopard is rough on the highway. You don't want to do that either, but you do want to embrace the leopard.
Right. Yeah. If I find myself embraced with a leopard, but I'm going to get one pet in before it kills me. But that's just how I am. But that's the thing that I think we're called to do. And if we just did that as Christians, there'd be no other problem. Bam, that would solve so many of the problems that Christians have created for themselves. Yeah. And I think part of the reason why there is so much outrage over this is because it distracts us from that we should probably be doing. Yeah.
And this
this over here, I'm going to do this over here. I'm choosing the better lot and I shall not be deprived.
I do not see this any different as a Christian saying this is offensive to Christianity, of jumping up and doing that. I see that as the same thing as a person on the left virtue signaling of, for the people and this and that, doing their virtue signaling while they fly back and forth on their jets and whatever it is they're virtue signaling about, their lifestyle is carrying out something completely different. And there's that famous quote, what is it, the single greatest cause of atheism in the world today is Christians who who live God, they deny Christ by their actions while they're declaring Christ by their mouth, but they're living in a way that people say that I don't see God in your actions. And I think instead, Christians, if you're watching this, American Christians, if you're watching this, instead of being the first one to post saying I'm offended by what culture is saying about God, be the first one to love your neighbor who's next to you. To reach out and visit that person, to do the things where Jesus said, what you've done to the least of these, you've done it to me. And when you didn't do it to the least of these, you didn't do it to me. Instead of being the first one to comment about how we're offended by culture, be the first one to do for someone what Jesus said to do. And in doing so, you might end up being offensive. The culture is going to look at you and say, what's wrong with you? And when they're doing that, when culture is saying, get back, get down, stop what you're doing, that means you're doing exactly what you should be doing. I think it's time that Christians stop being offended and we start being offensive.
Yeah. How many times do we see Jesus embracing the people who are normally outcasts, even the tax collectors, the most offensive people there were in his time? And here he is embracing them. He's dining with prostitutes and other things like that. And again, I really think that's the formula. That's the model. God came down and showed us by his example how he wants us to act and behave. Render unto Caesar. It's going to be what it's going to be, but that's not your concern. So.
Well, I don't know how united or how opposed we were, but this has been United Opposition with Scott and Marshall tackling this. Mike, thank you for joining in on the comments and letting us hear what you had to say. And you guys, if you're watching, post those comments. We're going to read them. We're going to bring them up. Thanks again to Covenant Coffee for carrying out the mission of Christ and doing what you're doing. And thank you everyone for joining us. Until next week, this is Scott and Marshall, United Opposition. God bless you guys.